Hey, 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 happy Thursday, y'all. And welcome to another episode of Bankroll Your Brains Thursdays. I'm Nicole Roberts-Jones, the Bankroll Your Brains expert. Always excited, happy, and blessed to be here with you for another Thursday where we talk about one of three things. Number one, what is your brilliance? Your purpose, the one thing God created you to do in this world. Second is the value tied to it. And the third area is how do you create multiple streams of income from it? I'm always excited to every week either bring a guest that is doing that and or be able to teach. So this week I'm bringing in a guest, but before I introduce her, now those of you that come here week after week, you know what I'm getting ready to say. As my grandmother would say, don't come in this house and not speak. I see you joining. So all I want you to do is say hello, tell us where you're from, and as you come in, if as my guest shares, she shares something that is resonating with you, listen, I can see your comments. If you see me looking kind of to the side, that means I'm looking at your comments. If you have a question as she shares, I want you to ask the question. If she's saying something that resonates with you, I want you to give her some hearts. If she steps on your toes, give her a little fire. Because when we do these segments, when I do these segments, I'm not coming for who you already are. I'm coming for who you have not yet become. Hey, Wayne, am I saying it right in Chicago? Hey, girl, hey. Excited that you're here. So with that said, grab a pen. If this is your first time, what you have to know is these segments aren't meant to motivate you or inspire you. They're meant to activate you. So I need you to get a pen only if you want to go after what's next for you. Hi, Joanne. Tell us where you are in the world. So with that said, let's get this party started. Hey, my Renata and the BK in the house. So let's get this party started. So with that, our segment today is Be Well and Do Good. And our expert today is Michelle Singh. Now, Michelle is a school achievement strategist. She's an award-winning educator, a best-selling author, an international speaker, a CEO of LCT-E Learning Solutions, and that's not it. Oh, this girl, let me tell you something. In the middle of her getting her PhD, this is not on her bio. She had the nerve to be building her business. Let me tell you. So when you when you tell God, I don't have time or I can't do this right now, I want you to understand not only is Michelle starting a business, getting her PhD, she just moved her baby into her dorm for undergrad. Tell me that is not possible, right? So Michelle helps educators embrace and implement culturally responsive instructional materials and digital tools to prioritize diversity and inclusion and improve student achievement. She has a relentless drive to ensure the educational needs of students from diverse cultural backgrounds are met and that their gifts are cultivated. Now, all the mothers and fathers out there, is that not what you want for your child? So whether you are a parent, whether you work in education, or whether you want to start a business, this segment is for you. So don't think because you don't work in education, this is not for you. If you got kids, this is for you. So listen, she uses 20 years of experience as an educator, a leader in the nation's fourth largest school district as an adjunct professor. Teaching education to improve the way teachers teach and students learn. So without further ado, help me welcome Miss Michelle Singh. Hey, girl.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here.
Excited. Let me tell you, she's going to try to be all conservative, but if you follow her on social media, she has the brightest colors on all the time. So I need y'all to get that she's going to try to be conservative, but this woman is on fire. That education shifts in a way that sees Black and brown students like never before. So if you're a parent or you work in education or you're an administrator or you're no one, I want you to say, hey, that's me. Hey, that's me in the comments. I just want to see who's here. Okay. So with that, let's just dig right in, Michelle, and tell us, after a 15 plus year being a leader in school achievement and advancement and working in all areas of school administration, tell us what made you say, you know what, it's time for me to do something different.
Right. So think about this: 15 years in a career, established, worked my way up, spent 10 years in the classroom, made it all the way to the district, college professor. I mean, I was set, right? So I thought. What happened was I started to recognize, working at the district for about 5 years on a larger scale, that there were certain types of students. And when I say certain types of students, I mean students of color. And these students, from what I observed when going to different schools and going to classrooms, they were disengaged in their educational settings. And what really hit me was some of these students were kids that I knew from church and from organizations, and they presented differently in their classroom with their teacher than they did when I saw them in their home settings, in the settings where they felt safe and they felt like they belong.
Mm.
I even saw it with my own daughter, right? My daughter, Nicole mentioned that we just moved her to Howard University in
Now, wait,
Washington,
now
D.C.
let's just stop because doesn't she look like she should be at Howard? I'm just saying. So don't let the youngness fool you because anyway, young looking.
Thank
As
you.
they say, look, as they say, black don't crack. So anyway, I just had to acknowledge that because she looked like her daughter's sister. I'm just saying. Anyway, sorry, go ahead, girl.
Thank you kindly. So, but my daughter, right? So she's very active outside of school. She was active in school, but more active outside of school in organizations. She's on a pre-law track, communications major at Howard. But in her classes, in her school, and let me just say this, she was typically the only student of color in her classes, in her advanced placement classes.
Mm-hmm.
She was the one in the back of the classroom. She was the one that was very silent, which was totally unnatural from what I observed
Right.
when she was in her setting than when she was at home with us and in church and in her groups as president, in mock trial, in all of these things, right?
Mm.
So when I'm noticing and I'm recognizing these things for particularly students of color, I started to think back on my own experience, right? In
Mm.
school. I'm not from this country. I'm originally from Jamaica. And when I came here from Jamaica, as I was a 9-year-old kid coming here from Jamaica, it took a little bit for me to acclimate, into the public school system. I had great experiences, but I also had experiences that were not so pleasant because there were certain situations that did not make me feel like I belonged. I'm just gonna say it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it took teachers to help me feel that sense of belonging, but it also impacted me in other ways when teachers didn't make me feel that sense of belonging,
Mm-hmm.
right? This one particular instance, I remember it was fourth grade. My teacher called on me to read a passage out loud. So I stood up and I started reading the passage, and you got a picture, 9-year-old me, straight from Jamaica, straight off the plane. And I pronounced a word with my accent. The word was violence. And with my Jamaican accent, I pronounced the word violence. The whole class started laughing at me,
Mm.
right? And so, of course, you can imagine, I'm new to the country, new to the classroom. I felt very sad. I felt very, hurt. I felt like I did something wrong. Like I tried
Yeah.
to hold back the tears and everything, but it just flowed because I felt ashamed because they were laughing at me.
Yeah.
And there was this teacher, my Spanish teacher. Like I felt like she came to my rescue.
Mm.
She got that class right together for being out of line, right? And she made it a point to, one, thank me for reading, but then explain to the class that words sound differently in other countries, and different
Mm.
does not mean deficient. That, to me, just confirmed. It imprinted on me, for years. Obviously, fourth grade, and I'm remembering this at my age
Right.
now.
And let me stop you because you just said that you just dropped a nugget. Different doesn't mean deficient. But what's so interesting is doesn't our school systems as a system, if you aren't like everybody else in that system, now you heard Michelle just say this, so I'm gonna say it because she's not gonna step on toes. If you're the only black kid in the system, you're different, which means you're deficient. Which this is what I've seen. Now I'm not a parent, but I worked in schools for years. Okay, so kids that look like me, that maybe their counselor did not look like them. Y'all know what I'm talking about. This is a black doctor. Come on, let's keep it real. Who then would say stuff like, "Oh, well, they need to be they're ADHD." No, or they have some other thing they're trying to diagnose this child as because they're different, not deficient. I need y'all to get this. So,
Right.
I couldn't
Well,
skip that because that was good. That was good.
yeah, and I mean, I could go on and on about that and the differences between how, certain students learn, males, black boys versus girls. There's just so much. There's just so
Yeah.
much that we could get into, and about how biases, how teachers and humans have biases. We all have biases, and how
Mhm.
if we don't recognize and confront them, they really interfere in the way that we view students and the way that we make students feel like they belong in the classroom, and the way that we teach, and the way that students learn, and ultimately the way that students progress in their educational setting
Yeah.
and are set up for their future outcomes.
And let me say this because listen,
There's so much impact.
there's so much, but I want y'all to get this. There's a school to prison pipeline. Okay.
Mhm.
So when we're talking deficient and they're not deficient, but then they feel deficient, they look for other ways to fill that deficiency. So that's why I believe, not I believe, I know, because I started working with teenage girls right after the LA riots. And a number of my girls, one of them was in a gang because that was where she felt like she was seen. That was where she felt like she got some influence, not because she was looking for influence, but when you feel good and you feel deficient everywhere else, that's where you're going to
Right.
go. And we already know if you're a gang member what happens over time. I'm just saying, not all gang members, and I'm not judging because I was headed on that path too. So when you aren't being affirmed in your school and you don't take it to your parents because maybe you think that's how it's supposed to be, so let's move because Michelle, look, Michelle is so passionate about this. She'll talk to you about why, and we'll go all the way in. But I want you guys to hear the difference, what happens when somebody like Michelle, who not only lived it, then lived it through her child, she lived it herself. You guys see the Jamaican flag over her head. She's trying to see her Jamaican pride. So not only did she live it, then her child lived it. And because this is her expertise, instead of, and I'm saying this because I'm going to step on somebody's toes, instead of her seeing a problem and complaining about it, she said, if not me, then who? If not now, then when? And so
Mm.
after working all this time, and let me tell y'all something, when you get to a certain level in education, you get a good paycheck. Come on, somebody. So you left all of that behind to stand in the gap. So let's talk about the challenges that are many schools are facing, and she says some of them, students are facing, and then what happens when those challenges don't get faced, or however you want to address that, because I know there's so many angles you can go. So, but I
Let
want
me
to,
tell you,
yeah,
yeah, there's so many, right? But the reality is, in our public school system, 53% of the students look like us, are Black and brown. 53, that's the majority of students that sit in classrooms in K-12 education. But you
yeah,
want to know how many of their teachers look like them? Only 18%. The reason I bring that up is because there is that racial mismatch in the students who are present and their teachers.
yeah.
But what's even greater is that mismatch causes for students to not have relationships with their teachers. And when students don't have quality relationships with their students, and when their cultural needs are not met in the classroom, that's
Mhm,
where that disengagement happens. That's where I see
mhm.
my daughter sitting in the back of her classroom with her head down and her voice silent, knowing good and well that that is not who she is,
Right.
because she does not feel safe in that educational setting, right? So we have disengagement, we have lack of motivation, we have grades, achievement being affected. We have
Mhm.
such a high value that's placed on standardized testing that students don't get a chance to showcase their learning in ways that highlight their strengths.
So
And
good.
that's even
So good.
authentic into what the real world skills are that they're going to need, right?
And here's the
And
thing I
so,
want y'all to get, because Michelle and I had this whole topic, and I'm saying this, I'm interrupting her only because those of you that don't work in administration may not realize this. Most principals, I'm not saying all, I'm saying most, so don't get mad at me and be sending me inbox messages. I'm saying most, I didn't say all, okay? Are so focused on student test scores because that's how they get their funding for their school. I need y'all to get this. So if they're so focused on student test scores, but aren't looking at why the students aren't achieving those test scores. So let me just say this really quickly. So I'm on the other end from Michelle. I was a student. I was a school change consultant, meaning that I went into schools and developed programs. So I didn't do teaching. I was the person that brought in the auxiliary programs. What I saw at this first school I worked at, which was 80% Latino, 20% African American. I'm sharing this with you because I'm not Latino and I don't speak Spanish. Yet I knew I had to be able to speak to the Latino parents because I needed them to be served as much as the Black parents that look like me. The school was so focused on, they didn't care that the Latino parents didn't speak English. I'm keeping it all the way real raw, y'all. I'm from LA. Okay. This was around Proposition 227. I'm about to age myself. This is in 1998. Okay. So what used to anger me is the teachers that were not of color would sit the Latino or the two Black kids in class out in the hallway so that they could teach in Spanish, because you're not supposed to be teaching in Spanish. But that didn't solve the problem. But they were so focused on test scores. So what happens
right.
to that Black child that's sitting in the hallway? Oh, one of them Black parents would come up there and be cussing people out, but which also didn't help. So what I want you guys to get is that it's a systemic problem, but it's also a
Mhm.
cultural problem, because our culture doesn't know how to go into the system to do something about it. And that's where Michelle is filling the gap. And I need y'all to get that what she's sharing is
Right.
so. Sorry, go ahead. I just wanted to get
No,
that.
no, I'm thinking because as you're saying, 1998, when you're trying to implement these changes in 1998, it is 2022, y'all, and we are still having significant challenges in education with diversity, with equity and inclusion. Significant in
Yeah,
2022. And Nicole is talking about trying to do, work in 1998. It is cyclical because the the public education system is heavily dependent on testing. And
yeah,
testing, I am going to say it because I don't tiptoe around testing. Standardized testing has high stakes, and standardized testing is not it does not do well for our
but
black and
it
brown
wasn't
students.
created for us. I'm gonna say what she
It
not gonna
was
say. It was
not.
not
It
created for
was not.
us,
It
right?
was not. Right. And so what I am so passionate about, because of, like Nicole said, my own experience as a student of color from a different country, trying to, fit, to find my way in a new school, in a new country,
Yeah,
seeing my daughter, seeing my own students who sat in other classes and were totally different in those classes than they even were in my classes. That is why I am so passionate about helping teachers create, implement strategies and create programs and improve their practices that really help their students not only to flourish academically, but they're flourishing socially, emotionally, and most importantly, culturally, because there is such a huge need to have the cultural gaps met of students, because 53% of our students are Black and brown, culturally different from their teachers,
yeah.
right?
And listen, and then on top of that, sorry, Michelle, you saying something popping all in my spirit that I've never said with you on before. So Michelle's an immigrant, okay? So she comes here from another country. Her language is English, but she says things in a different way. Okay. And by the way, my hairstylist used to be Jamaican, and I would just love when her relatives would call. I'm like, girl, keep talking. I love it. Right. So, but I want you guys to get this. When a Black child gets bused, and many parents want their children to go to these better schools, which really usually are not in our neighborhood. I'm gonna keep it real. So
Mm-hmm.
when they're not in our neighborhood, that child is an immigrant going to another
Mm,
part of the city because they don't fit culturally into
yeah.
that other school. So your experience, Michelle, as an immigrant from another country is the same thing that our children are being immigrants from another county, another
Mhm.
city in these schools. And as Michelle said, her daughter, and how many of you guys, your child might be the only Black student, or I didn't deal with this until I got in college. I went to all Black high school, all Black everything. And then I got in college and I went to a white school. Thank God I did, because had I gone to HBCU, I wouldn't have experienced this. When I went to my white school, my teacher started telling me, you didn't do your homework. So it doesn't stop. It continues because I had never seen somebody like me that could write something. I'm like, who else is doing my homework for me? So how do you make a difference in this divide? Now, I want you guys to know that if this is an issue that you are dealing with, I want you to know in a minute, Michelle's going to give a free gift. When you get that free gift, email her, because this is what she does. If you have a child that's in a school district that's dealing with this, if you are an administrator and you don't know what to do with this, or anywhere in between, this is your answer. And if you don't have a child yet, you will, and you will have this issue. So keep her information. So with that, Michelle, how do you know? And how do I want to word this? How do you make a difference? How do you stand in the gap? Because the school system, school districts are such a big organization. So how do you really go in and shift this big ship to do something different?
Well, one, I have to really be transparent and upfront, and I can't tiptoe around issues like biases and microaggressions and stereotypes and things like that, when these are things that our students and our teachers are facing on a daily basis, and when they are not confronted, then they continue to damage and destroy these learning experiences that these
Yeah.
students have, and our Black and brown students continue to fall through the cracks, and they continue to fall behind in graduation rates, fall
Mhm.
behind in how they contribute to the community, right? I mean, the research tells us those numbers are growing, right? And so, again, Nicole mentioned I have 20 years of experience, but I really took these 20 years to come up with a system, to come
Mhm.
up with a framework that pulls in all of my research, all of my experience, you know, from being a parent, from being a student, from being a teacher, from being a professor, in all of the different roles that I have served in education, everything is in this framework that I work with school districts and work with schools with. It's called the Equal methodology. And it is, you know, it's backed by research, it's backed by experience, it's even featured by Microsoft. Microsoft has trusted this, you know, framework, and it is something that challenges schools to really look at their educational spaces to see how they promote diversity, equity, and inclusion. It helps teachers to look at their teaching practices so that they can see how it embraces diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'll give you an example, a quick example of that. If you go into a teacher's class and the posters on the wall, because every teacher has posters on their wall and quotes, right? Because that's what we do. Are any of those quotes representative of the students who sit in the classrooms who are minorities and their ancestors, right? Or are they quotes by Shakespeare and, you know, our white Anglo-Saxon males, right? Right? So diversifying what is represented in the classroom, something as simple as that. Asking the students to, you know, what are your favorite quotes, or what's a book that comes from your culture? You know, having interviews, incorporating student-led interviews so that they can interview their family members and tell their stories, so that the voices of the students and their ancestors are represented in the classroom setting.
Right.
Like that does so much for the culture and so much for the confidence of the students and the sense of belonging that they feel in their learning environments, right?
Yeah, and that makes a difference. And that's two things out of many. You know, as you're talking, this is not an education example, but it is in alignment with what she's teaching. So I said this a few minutes ago. I'm from South Central LA. And I remember one day, and I used to teach at U.S.A. So I'm leaving my class. So y'all know, if you know me, like I think you know me, you know I'm suited and booted. Got on a suit because that's how I used to do when I was teaching. So I'm in my car, and I had a pretty nice car, and I'm going to see my dad. Now, again, I'm from South Central LA. Do you not get pulled over? I get out of the car, because back then they asked you to get out immediately instead of just putting your hands up. They asked you to get out. That's how long ago it was. But anyway, so I get out of the car, and he sees the police officer, white police officer, sees I have on a suit. And he goes, "What are you doing in this neighborhood?" I said, "What are you doing in this neighborhood?" And he goes, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Obviously, you're not from here." I said, "For you to ask me that," I said, "This is my neighborhood." I didn't even want to tell him I didn't live there anymore, but I grew up in that neighborhood. So I said, "This is my neighborhood." And so he said, "But I don't look like this is my neighborhood," which says to me that you don't know this neighborhood. So I'm sharing that with you because that's exactly what's happening in our classroom. Many teachers don't understand the culture they're teaching. And so he was totally being innocent. He wasn't trying to be disrespectful. He wasn't trying to be racist. We had a nice little conversation as I schooled him about the neighborhood, right? So, I mean, but that was his viewpoint of life. What he probably knew about Black people were rappers, and that was it, or basketball players. He had never seen somebody like me. And I said, "Oh, I teach at USC up the street." He said, "You're a Yes." He couldn't believe it. So I want you guys to get that when a teacher doesn't understand the child, let alone the culture, let alone the neighborhood they live in, how can they understand how to teach them?
Right. Oh, I mean, you're touching on so much there, Nicole. So much, right? The way that Black and brown people are represented in the curriculum.
Yeah.
It is stereotypical if they are even represented in the
At
curriculum.
all. Oh, we can go into a whole conversation about critical race theory, but we ain't gonna do that because we'll be here for the next 3 hours because I already know. But I'm gonna tell y'all, if you want to ask and you want to have a deep conversation, this is the one to have it with. So with that, let's give a free gift. For those of you that know you need more, oh, gotta love Wi-Fi. Listen, whoever.
Oh, okay. I was about to say what happened right there. I was checking mine.
This information today, the enemy's trying to get it off, but we don't play that. So anyway, tell them about this free gift and who would benefit from grabbing it.
Absolutely. So this is a journal. It's a reflective journal it could be for educators, but if you're a parent, it could be for you as well as for an administrator, because the types of prompts that are in there really makes you think about why you are doing something and how you are doing it so that it benefits students, particularly students of color. What's the reason? What's the joy they're going to get? What's the humanity in the activity that you're giving them? right? Those are the two things that I always go back to. Where's the joy and where's the humanity? Because if that's not in our teaching and in our learning, then our students are not going to feel safe in our environments.
So
Right?
good. So again, meet LCTE, and that's the name of our company, by the way. Meet LCTE.com. All you got to do, and for those of you that are going to say, oh, but I want to know how to get in touch with her, I'm going to tell you, when you get her free gift, she's going to email it to you. So therefore, you can reply to that email. So here's what my ask for you is: if you send her an email, don't email her a question. Tell her the issue that you see happening in, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a parent, or whether you're an administrator. So then she can be clear on how to tell you best what's next. Okay, whether that's to set up some kind of discovery call, whether that's this is how we can help that system. And I say we because her company can do that. But I want you to understand that this can be like COVID. So you heard me talk about 1998. We're in 2022. It hasn't shifted. I'm from California. She works in Florida, but although she serves school districts all over. Another thing she didn't tell you is her methodology is so yummy that Microsoft actually has white labeled it to go into school districts. Hello. So if you know you have an issue, this is the woman that has the gift to fill it. So as we wrap this episode, because again, Michelle and I can talk about this forever, and everything I was saying, Michelle, was stuff was dropping in my spirit while you were sharing, because I want you guys to get this cultural shift is the biggest, and this happens. If this happens to you at work, what makes you think your kids ain't dealing with it?
Right.
And we forget that. We forget that the school system is just as big of a system, and probably even bigger than some of your 9 to 5s. So if you're dealing with it at work, know that your child is dealing with it every day, and they don't have the words that you might have to say to be able to fill the gap. So thank you, Michelle.
Real quick, but think about if you're at work dealing with diversity, equity, and inclusion issues, and you have a whole entire department that provides resources, where is that in your school system?
That's a drop in mic moment right there. Where is that in your school system? Where I'm going to show you where it is. It's in your face right now. Her name is Michelle. Get meetlcte.com. Get the free gift. Stand in the gap for your children. If nobody else is going to do it, know that this woman was crafted and created to do it. So thank you for saying yes to it. Thank you for your willingness to leave a lucrative space. She could have just been silent and got paid for it. Got paid to continue to be an administrator, which would have been so much easier than saying, listen, I'm going to disrupt a system that nobody else is standing in to help the cultural divide get shifted so we don't have to have a divide anymore. And that's going to take some time. But she said yes to it. And I'm excited because let me say this in full disclosure, Michelle is a client. And the thing I love when I meet women like Michelle is that her genius is there and she couldn't see it. And I'm going to say that she saw one piece of it, but it was so much bigger than what she saw. So if you don't mind, for the people that are present, real quick, because we got about 3 more minutes, I'm probably going to go over, show them the difference of your ability to get clear on the way you use your genius in this way, how things shifted for you when you got clear on that.
Ooh. Clarity shifted everything. I have there's a lot going on in here, a lot. It wasn't organized in a way that it is now. And because I'm clear and because I was able to create this methodology, it helps me to focus. And it actually turned into the work that I'm doing in DE&I and education. I didn't even have that name. I didn't even realize that was where everything was pushing me. But once I got that clarity, once I got that methodology down, that's when it kind of clicked. Like, this is the work that I have been doing my entire career. Mm-hmm. And now I have it packaged. I have it, it's incredible. I don't even know how else to put it, but it is now, it's just organized, and I can touch so many with it now because it's clear and it's organized.
And I want you guys to get the reason I shared that with her is because asked her to share that is because many of you, and this was me too, which those of you that have heard my stories, why I had to hire a coach almost 10 years ago, over 10 years ago, to help me get clear, because you do what you do on autopilot. So Michelle's been doing this the whole time she's been in schools. Every role she played, but she wasn't getting paid for it. Okay. Now, because she's clear on it, she's created a methodology from it. She's getting paid for it. And I'm talking about good because you heard about Microsoft, right? Microsoft didn't come before she was clear. And if they would have come before she was clear, they wouldn't have bought it because she wouldn't have been able to articulate it. So those of you that know it's time for you to start a business and you don't know where to start, or you have all these ideas like Michelle did, or you have already started it and you're not seeing predictable revenue. Many of you already know I have a 2-day intensive coming up called Be the Answer. It's coming up at the end of this month. So those of you that know it's time, I want to invite you. So this is a 2-day event. That, by the way, Michelle is on what I call my Purpose Squad. My Purpose Squad, or group of, was women. Men are included too, but we only have women right now in the Purpose Squad, that we pray for y'all once a month. And they'll be in the virtual room, it's virtual, holding the space with you so that listen, I'm coaching you for those 2 days on the 4 areas you need, the 4 systems you need in your business to make multiple streams of revenue. So you can find out more on the website. But before I go more into this, let me say thank you to you, Michelle, for all you do, for allowing me to coach you. But even more than that, for standing in the gap for all the children that I know will be blessed because you said yes. Thank you for that. I appreciate you. And thank you for being here this week. So with that said, y'all, I'm going to show you a quick commercial just to give you more insight about Be the Answer. And then I'll come back and I'll wrap up this episode. So here we go. Okay, now it doesn't want to play. I've been having so many technical difficulties. I don't know why my video is acting crazy right now. Hold on one second, y'all. This happened last week too. And I don't know why it's doing this. So with that, instead of me belaboring the issue, I am going to invite you to go on over to my YouTube page. It's nrjnetwork.com, where you can learn more and see various videos about Be the Answer. Or you can go to betheanswerintensive.com. I was having problems with my videos last week too. I don't know why it's acting like that, but here's what I do know. Anytime I'm having so much resistance, then somebody's going to be blessed by this. So those of you, you've been sitting on the edge of your seat, knowing like you know that it's time to start. I'm talking to you. You need to be in the virtual room. So betheanswerintensive.com. If you have questions, please feel free to send an email. Listen, matter of fact, you can send me an inbox message on Instagram. There's my Instagram there, whether it's me or my team. If you have a question about Be the Answer, we're happy to answer that question. So with that said, that's it for this episode of Bankroll Your Brains Thursdays. It's always my honor and privilege to be here to pour into you each week. I'll be back next Thursday with another episode. So until then, have a phenomenal rest of your Thursday, y'all. Bye.